Hey guys, what's going on? Mouse here. So in this video, we're gonna be looking at a 50 billion run with the Win team featuring Soyeon. So I'm gonna be comparing her performance with Goto Ryuji based on my own experience. So you'll have a good benchmark, and we'll also go over the adjustments I did on the rotation, which is very important for high scores. I'm also gonna give you some new tips and all the updates on the builds and stats. Just a quick reminder before we begin, the new season of the Content Creator Program just started. If you forgot to extend last season, make sure to resupport since all supports were automatically cancelled. We've got codes coming soon with Essence Stones, Abyssal Crystals, Gold, and more. Once again, thanks so much for all the support. And with that, let's begin. So last win POD, I was already able to hit 50 billion with Goto Ryuji, and in my previous Soyeon review, we talked about the potential for her to be better in POD, but after putting in a good amount of runs, my conclusion is that there's really not much difference. I feel like at best, Soyeon might have a slightly higher ceiling, maybe 3 to 5% more in the ideal setup, but that's with the manual ultimate timing. In my run, I did a hybrid Gina with Iron Will plus Sylph's Blessing since Soyeon gives Gina a better damage buff than Goto Ryuji. But the problem is right now is that Gina's ultimate is still bugged, and some ultimates cooldown will be messed up if you're not manually timing it. And on top of that, Soyeon's debuff also doesn't always stick on the dragon's head, so the uptime is actually very inconsistent, and worse, sometimes auto ultimates also delay the debuff on the head. Meanwhile, Goto Ryuji is more straightforward and can just bring a clean, consistent team buff without any of those RNG issues. We also talked about how it can buff Jinwoo's damage. However, apparently, the buff on Jinwoo is not that noticeable either because his skill multipliers and the win bonuses are already very high and the diminishing return is too much. Like for example, the Thunderstorm already has huge percentages. The DKD has even more crazy amounts of it too. Plus, we're also running 2-piece Infamy set and all of those buffs, so it ended up with minimal difference. So overall, this pretty much just confirms that Soyeon really is the least favorable among the idle units, and not just in Win POD, but across almost every content type. So her use right now is just a win debuffer in the guild boss. Of course, devs have been buffing units lately, like Mion and Shua, so things could still change in the future patches. Now let's break down the rotation changes I made here. After the Stormbringer, I start with Wind Shroud, of course, for the attack buff. Then I immediately use the DKD once before I use the Liberation into the Thunderstorm, and finally the second DKD. And the reason for these changes in the order now is to get the DKD off cooldown earlier for the next break attempt. Or alternatively, you can also skip the first Wind Shroud, go straight into the DKD first before doing the rest of the combo. So that way, as soon as the break state ends and you get the next Shadow Step, DKD will be ready. So this makes breaking the hands faster compared to the usual rotation where Liberation and Thunderstorm come before the double DKD. Just a few extra tips about Jinwoo's ultimate. What I do now is before the dragon flies away, of course, I use the ultimate to get the full duration of Leonard's skills. And same for the golem phase, I use the ult right before the cutscene. So this one is very important for the score. And there's also another window around the 1 minute or so mark after the golem phase. I miss it this run, but it's a good spot to land another round of Leonard's skills on the head instead of some of them hitting the hands. And of course, always use it at the end to squeeze in more damage, especially with both the skill 2 and the ultimate. For the build, nothing major changed, but for the shadows, I switched to Ice Witch instead of Igris Shadow Authority because for some reason it gave me better average. So I'd say just try both and see what works better for you. Artifacts are still just the usual ones. Skills are unchanged except for the +2 Thunderstorm now that I have. Then the Blessing Stones also same, and lastly the course. So stats wise, Leonard's was balanced. Don't worry too much about this. The multipliers usually won't have much difference in the case of this team composition. And for Soyeon, still isn't that strong, but even with perfect gear, I don't think she'll be game changing anyways. And for Gina, her stats were above average, so she helped a lot in terms of damage too. And lastly, for Jinwoo, I used 200 intelligence in this run. You can adjust this depending on your comfort level. You can make it 250, 300, or even 150 if you want a perfect run. And here are the final stats. So yeah, that's it for this one. Hopefully this gave you some good insight on Soyeon versus Goto Ryuji in Win POD, and also for other game content too. And that's it. So now let's take a look at the replay.
이쪽이야.
消えろ。